When the host announced the genius behind the campaign, all eyes went to his mistress glowing on stage, but the client looked past her, straight to me in the back row, my employee badge already deactivated. "We were lucky," he said into the microphone, "that we met the real strategist before signing the final contract." The way my husband flinched, and she dropped the glass trophy, was just the opening act. My name is Riley Bennett, and I am sitting in the 27th row of the Grand Ballroom at the Peninsula Chicago, watching my life get stolen under spotlights. The event is the Midwest Marketing Guild's annual gala, or some other self-congratulatory nonsense. The air is thick with the smell of expensive perfume, a suffocating blend of sandalwood and desperation, and the faint, lingering scent of lukewarm salmon from the dinner everyone paid $500 a plate for, and nobody actually ate. On stage, bathed in a brilliant, unforgiving white light, my company, Leak Dynamics, is accepting the Game Changer Award for the Nimbus Arc campaign, a campaign I built from the bones up, a campaign that cost me 6 months of sleep and, as it turns in, my marriage, except I am not on stage. Vanessa Cole she is glowing, literally. She is poured into a silver sequin dress that must have cost a month's salary, her hair a perfect cascade of engineered waves. She's clutching the heavy, angular glass trophy, my trophy, and leaning into the microphone, describing her creative process. "It just came to me in a flash," she's saying, her voice breathy, practiced, humble. "We knew, intuitively, that we had to disrupt the existing narrative. We had to be brave." I almost laughed. The only thing Vanessa ever disrupted was the line for the espresso machine. The only thing she's brave about is her willingness to lie. She's describing the night I stayed up until 3 a.m., fueled by cold pizza and a genuine, burning insight, mapping the consumer journey on my kitchen wall with a dying dry erase marker. She wasn't there. She was, as I learned much later, otherwise occupied. And standing next to her, beaming like a proud stage father, is Alex, my Alex Griffin, the Chief Financial Officer of Leak Dynamics, my husband of 7 years. His hand is resting on the small of Vanessa's back. It's not an accidental touch. It's a proprietary touch, a gesture I once recognized as mine, now repurposed for his rising star. He looks good in his $2,000 Tom Ford suit, the one I picked out for him last Christmas. He looks powerful. He also looks intensely nervous. His eyes keep darting to the back of the room, scanning the shadows where I'm sitting. He's looking for me. I knew he would be, not out of concern, but for control, to gauge my reaction, to make sure the bomb he planted hasn't gone off prematurely. He needs me to be the quiet, supportive, slightly wrinkled wife in the back row. He needs me to play my part. My heart is beating, a dull, steady thud against my ribs. It's not racing, it's just working, keeping me upright. My head, however, is strangely empty. It's a cavern. The hot glare of the stage lights feels like a physical weight on my skin, even from this distance. I can hear the clinking of glasses as waiters clear the tables, the low murmur of the crowd, the scrape of a chair on the parquet floor. It all sounds like it's happening underwater, filtered through a thick plastic sheet that separates me from the rest of the room. I feel nothing. I feel everything. I feel like a ghost at my own funeral. And the murderers are giving the eulogy. The master of ceremonies, a local news anchor with teeth too white for this lighting, steps back up and claps enthusiastically. An incredible achievement. Leak. Truly game-changing. He consults his card. And now, a few words from the brand that trusted Leak with this bold new direction. Please welcome the Chief Marketing Officer of Nimbus Arc, Sterling Hart. Polite, corporate applause, Sterling Hart walks onto the stage. He's different from the Leak crew, older, quieter, in a suit that is expensive but not flashy. He has the air of an academic, not a salesman. He doesn't look like a man easily fooled by sequins or strategically balanced spreadsheets. This is Vanessa's cue. She straightens her spine, pushes her hair back in a subtle, camera-ready movement. She hones in on Sterling, preparing that wide-eyed, brilliant smile. She's ready to deliver the line she practiced a dozen times. It's been an honor leading this campaign. Sterling. A true partnership. Alex grips the side of the lectern, a white-knuckled hold. I can see a single bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. Just above his expensive haircut, his palms are wet. I know this because mine are completely dry. But Sterling Hart doesn't turn to Vanessa. He doesn't shake Alex's hand. Instead, he shields his eyes from the spotlight and scans the audience. He's looking for someone. He scans the front rows, the VIP tables filled with Verilique's fawning executives. Then his gaze travels further back. Row 15, row 20, row 27. Our eyes meet. A slow, tired smile spreads across Sterling's face. It's a smile of genuine recognition, of slight annoyance, of relief. He turns back to the microphone. The ballroom is silent, waiting for the expected corporate praise. "It's incredible, really," Sterling says, his voice amplified, filling the room, cutting through the smugness. "The strategy was groundbreaking. We at Nimbus Arc were blown away." He pauses, looks back toward Vanessa and Alex, who are frozen in their triumphant power couple pose. But what I find most incredible is that in one single preliminary workshop, one person sketched out nearly the entire framework for this game-changer campaign. In about 2 hours. A ripple goes through the crowd, a confused murmur. This isn't the script. On stage, Vanessa's smile doesn't falter, but it freezes. It's a rictus grin, the muscles in her jaw locking. I can see the flicker of pure panic in her eyes. The "what do I do" panic. Alex drops the act. He whips his head around, his gaze snapping directly to me in the back row. The proud, supportive husband vanishes. In his place is a cornered animal, all teeth and adrenaline, and for the first time, he sees me. He really sees me. He doesn't see a crying, hysterical, broken wife. He doesn't see the victim he's been carefully managing for months. He sees a woman who is perfectly still. He sees a woman who is not confused. He sees a woman who is tilting her head slightly, as if to say, "Go on, I'm listening." He sees a woman who has been waiting for this exact moment. Sterling Hart leans into the microphone, his voice cutting through the tension, sharp and clear. "Riley Bennett." The name hangs in the air. My name. "Ms. Bennett, I know you're out there," Sterling continues, projecting to the back row, a hint of steel in his voice. "I realize you might not be with the core team tonight, but would you mind coming up to the stage for a moment? It seems the spotlight missed its mark." Silence. Total. Shocked. Absolute silence. I stand up. The simple black dress I chose a dress for a funeral. I'd thought, my own swishes softly against the cheap upholstery of the chair. I feel the scrape of my simple leather flats on the carpet. Every head in the room, hundreds of them, turns. I see the faces of my former colleagues. Shock, confusion, dawning, horrified comprehension. I look past them, to the stage, to the man who shared my bed, and the woman who stole my work. Their faces are a portrait of abject terror. I take one step, then another, moving from the shadow into the narrow aisle. I am walking toward the battle, and everyone in this room finally knows the war has begun. 10 months ago, I was Riley Bennett, 32 years old, senior creative strategist at Verilique Dynamics, and I was, by all accounts, killing it. My world was the 22nd floor of a glass tower in the West Loop. It was an open-plan office designed to look like a creative utopia, all polished concrete, reclaimed wood, and beanbags no one ever actually sat in. The air was a constant thrum of nervous energy, fueled by artisanal coffee from the perpetually broken espresso machine and the incessant, pinging symphony of Slack notifications. We lived by the deadline, we spoke in taglines, and we believed, truly, that we were the most clever people in the room. A big pitch meant 3 days without sleep, fueled by catering budgets and the sheer, egotistical terror of losing. I loved it. And I loved Alex Griffin. I had loved him since I was 20, when he was the earnest, brilliant economics major who helped me pass statistics. Now, he is the chief financial officer of Viralik Dynamics. He was the anchor to my creative kite. I was the words. He was the numbers. He was stable, reliable, and genuinely preferred a perfectly balanced spreadsheet to any kind of human drama. He was the man I came home to, the one who would listen to my wildest campaign ideas and ground them with a single, practical question that made them infinitely better. We were the Viralik power couple, not in a flashy, overt way, but in a solid, goals kind of way. The strategist and the CFO. We were building an empire, or at least a very comfortable life with a great mortgage rate. This job, this life, it wasn't the plan. The original plan involved a drafty cabin in my home state of Colorado, a typewriter, and a lot of very serious, very unread novels. I wanted to be a writer, but I was also practical. Advertising was the compromise. It was a place where I could still tell stories. Only these stories came with a multi-million-dollar budget and a 30-second time slot. I was good at it. I could take a mountain of client data, a pile of boring market research, and find the one, simple, human truth hiding inside. Vanessa Cole was not a simple, human truth. She was a complex, beautiful lie. She'd been hired about 2 years ago, brought in from a smaller, scrappier agency in Dallas. She walked into the office on her first day, and the entire vibe of the creative floor shifted. She wasn't just pretty, she was striking. She had the kind of effortless, expensive-looking polish that made everyone else feel like they were wearing last season's clothes. Her confidence was a tangible thing, a weapon she wielded with a bright, disarming smile. She knew, instinctively, how to make people feel either like the most interesting person in the world or like a piece of furniture she needed to get around. I was her mentor, our CEO, a man who loved synergy, thought it would be a great fit. Riley, you're our best strategist. Show her the ropes. Show her the Viralik way. So I did. I put her on my accounts. I walked her through my process, taught her how to read the data, and how to build an insight from a stray comment in a focus group. I gave her my templates, my checklists, my hard-won shortcuts. I thought of it as a professional obligation. I thought I was being a good woman in the workplace, pulling up the next person in line. We had lunch. We shared frustrations about clients. She called me her work big sister. It felt friendly, productive. Alex was just Alex, the CFO. He and Vanessa probably didn't exchange more than 24 words in her first year. Their paths just didn't cross. Finance and creative were on different floors, and Alex was usually locked in board meetings or on calls with investors. I remember seeing them in the pantry once, standing near each other by the problematic espresso machine. I was so secure, so naive, that I walked up, kissed Alex on the cheek, and said to Vanessa, "Be careful. This one's the gatekeeper. He'll deny your expense reports just for fun." Alex laughed and called me a dork, and Vanessa smiled that bright, wide smile and said, "Oh, I'll be on my best behavior, boss." We were all so good at our jobs. Then, 10 months ago, the email landed. It was the white whale of pitches, Nimbus Arc, the social media behemoth that had spent the last year oscillating between apologies for data breaches and new scandals about political misinformation. They were toxic, and they knew it. They were putting out a call for a new agency, a new narrative, a full-scale campaign to rebuild public trust. This wasn't a tagline. This was a resurrection. The budget was astronomical. The creative potential was terrifying, and it was mine. The CEO called me into his office, the one with the glass walls overlooking the river. "Riley," he said, "this is your baby. You're leading the pitch. Don't screw it up." I walked out of that office feeling like I was vibrating. This was it. This was the moment I'd been working for. I was 32. I was at the fragile, dizzying peak of my game. The chief strategy officer was retiring in the spring, and this campaign was my unwritten, neon-flashing application for the job, but I was also stretched thin. The pressure to win was immense, and at home, Alex was more distant than he'd ever been. He was slammed. That was his word. Just slammed Riles. Sorry. Board meetings. Investor calls. Quarterly projections. He was at the office before I woke up and came home after I'd fallen asleep. I was trying to be the perfect, supportive wife to a man who was suddenly just an absence in our king-sized bed. And simultaneously trying to be the brilliant strategist who could save a billion-dollar company from itself. The balance was off. I felt like I was juggling knives, and one was bound to drop. I remember one night, about a week after the pitch kicked off, I came home close to 2 a.m. The apartment was dark. I'd been mapping consumer psychology on a 20-foot whiteboard until my brain felt like mush. I kicked off my shoes by the door, exhaustion hitting me like a physical blow. I found Alex asleep on the sofa, his laptop still balanced precariously on his chest, casting a pale blue glow on his face. He'd passed out. I smiled, a small, tired smile. My brilliant, hard-working husband. I went to shut the laptop, to wake him up and steer him toward the bedroom, but I saw the screen. It wasn't the usual quarterly report. It was a complex, multi-tabbed spreadsheet. I recognized the project code in the title, Nimbus Arc Proj. It was a forecast, a simulation of revenue streams. He had columns for projected bonus payouts, stock option vesting, and executive compensation adjustments. He was modeling, down to the last decimal, exactly how much money would flow into the company and into our lives if we won this contract. I stood there in the dark, watching the numbers flicker. I felt a swell of something, pride, partnership. I thought, we're in this together. He's working just as hard for this as I am. He was planning our future, our success. I gently closed the laptop, letting the room fall into darkness. I didn't see the ambition for what it was. I didn't see the greed. I saw a picture of our shared dream. It was a beautiful, powerful, and utterly false image. I threw myself into the Nimbus Arc pitch. It became an obsession, the only thing that felt real. My life shrank to the 4 glass walls of the main strategy room, which we'd nicknamed the War Room. I spent days, weeks, interviewing disillusioned users, digging through data dumps that showed exactly where their trust had fractured. The whiteboards were a chaotic map of my brain, covered in consumer psychology, behavioral data, and dozens of half-formed taglines. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and the acidic tang of dry erase markers. Alex would pop his head in sometimes, leaning against the doorframe, a picture of the handsome, supportive husband. He'd flash that easy smile. Saving the world with another tagline, Riles, he'd tease. I'd smile back, tired but energized. Something like that. This one's big. Alex? I know, he'd say, his voice a little more serious. It's big for all of us. Then he'd be gone, back to his world of numbers. It felt normal. The first crack in the foundation was so small I almost missed it. I came home late, maybe 10:30 on a Tuesday, my brain buzzing with research. The apartment was dark except for the light over the stove. I heard Alex's voice from the kitchen, low and clipped, not his usual relaxed, end-of-day tone. I paused in the hallway, my keys still in my hand. He was facing the window, his back to me, phone pressed to his ear. It's just too risky right now, he was saying, his voice a low murmur. We have to wait until the contract is signed. A pause. He sighed. No, she has no idea. She's completely buried in the pitch. She doesn't see anything else. My stomach hollowed out. I must have shifted my weight, because he spun around. His eyes went wide, a flash of pure, unadulterated panic. He snapped the phone shut and jammed it into his pocket. Hey, he said, forcing a casualness that didn't reach his eyes. You're home. Who has no idea about what? I asked, trying to keep my voice light, trying to ignore the sudden, cold dread in my gut. He let out a short, sharp laugh, running a hand through his hair. God, the bank, just the bank, our mortgage broker. They're being impossible about the refi on the rental property. It's a whole mess. I didn't want to bore you with the details. You're buried. It made perfect sense. It was logical. Alex handled all our finances, the spreadsheets part of our life. So why did the explanation feel so rehearsed? Why did it feel like a lie? I let it go. I had to. I had a deadline. At the office, the atmosphere was shifting in ways I couldn't yet name. Vanessa was suddenly everywhere. She was no longer just the junior creative. She was visible. I started seeing her in the executive wing, a place she had no business being. I saw her in the pantry, standing near Alex by the sparkling water tap, laughing at something he'd said, her head tilted, her hand brushing his arm. I rationalized it. Of course I did. This is the agency world. We call it cross-function bonding. She's ambitious. He's the CFO. It's smart for her to learn the business side. I was her mentor. I should be proud of her networking skills. I wasn't the jealous type. I was above that. Then came the first presentation. After 3 nights with almost zero sleep, I finished the initial strategic framework. It was, I knew, brilliant. It was the core truth of the campaign. I saved the file, a 30-page deck, to the secure internal server in the Nimbus Arc Pitch folder and sent a note to our CEO. Mark. Ready for your review. The next morning, I logged on to do one final polish before the internal review. I navigated to the folder. This folder is empty. I felt refreshed. Empty. I checked my desktop, my local drive, my sent items. Nothing. A cold, sharp panic. Unlike anything I'd ever felt. Seized my chest. I ran to the IT department, my heart hammering. Oh, yeah, the tech guy said, chewing on a pen, not even looking up from his screen. We had a server sync error last night. Big one. Corrupted a bunch of files on the strategy drive between 9 and 10 p.m. Sorry, Bennett, if it wasn't backed up to a personal cloud, it's probably just gone. Gone. 3 nights of my life. The entire foundation of the pitch. I had 2 hours before the meeting. I rebuilt the entire thing from memory. My fingers flying. My brain screaming. It was a frantic, sloppy ghost of the original. I walked into the meeting room feeling like I'd been hollowed out. Mark, the CEO, was at the head of the table, and Alex was there, sitting in the back, which was unusual for a preliminary creative review, and Vanessa. All right, team, Mark said, checking his watch. Riley, you're up. But before you start, Vanessa had some thoughts she wanted to share, just some top-line sparks she had this morning. My head snapped up. Vanessa. She stood up, looking impossibly polished, a faint, apologetic smile on her face. Oh, it's really nothing, she said, her voice breathy. It just sort of came to me. I was thinking, what if the campaign wasn't an apology? What if it was about radical transparency? She clicked her first slide. I stopped breathing. It was my deck, my words, my structure, my core thesis. But it was simplified, flattened. She had taken my nuanced, data-driven argument and turned it into a series of slick, empty buzzwords. She had stolen my blueprint, stripped it for parts, and spray-painted it. I just sat there. My rebuilt deck, the real one, a useless brick in my lap. I looked at Alex. He was staring at Vanessa, his expression carefully neutral, unreadable. He wouldn't meet my eyes. When she finished, Mark was beaming. Vanessa, this is outstanding, really sharp. This is exactly the kind of leadership I've been looking for. You are seriously stepping up. He turned to me, an afterthought. Riley, thanks for coming. Looks like Vanessa has a great handle on the core concept. Let's all build off her framework. Great teamwork. Teamwork. I sat in silence, shock warring with a rising, acidic nausea. If I spoke, what would I say? She stole my file that mysteriously vanished in an IT glitch. I would sound insane. I would sound jealous. I would sound like the bitter, paranoid senior woman being usurped by the young, shiny new thing, so I said nothing. That night, I was going to tell Alex. I needed my husband. I needed my partner to tell me I wasn't crazy. I made dinner, his favorite, and waited. He walked in at 8:30, tie already loosened. Alex, I started. my voice shaking. "We need to talk. Something happened today. With Vanessa. She took my work." He stopped, his keys dangling from his hand. He looked at me, not with concern, but with a flat, cold annoyance. "Riley, are you serious? We are this close to landing the biggest client in this agency's history, and you're starting a petty drama about your work. It's a team effort. You should be happy she's contributing." "It's not contributing, Alex. She stole it. The file." His phone buzzed on the counter. A loud, insistent vibration. He glanced at it, and his entire body tensed with relief. "Shit," he said, snatching it up. "It's the board. An urgent call. I have to go." "Go? Where do you go?" "It's 8:30 at night. Back to the office. Riles. It's the board." He was already grabbing his suit jacket, not looking at me. "We can talk about this paranoia later. Just try to be a team player, okay?" He walked out. He just left me standing there, alone in the kitchen, with 2 plates of food getting cold on the counter. I felt it then, the definitive, terrifying feeling of being pushed off my own tracks. My work was being co-opted, my husband was gaslighting me, and the name Vanessa was suddenly the link between both. I stood there for a long time. Then I went to our bedroom. I didn't cry. I picked up my phone. I didn't check social media. I didn't call a friend. I opened the company's internal intranet. I navigated to the resource booking system. Alex's public calendar, the one I could see, was blocked out. Urgent board call, external, but I had admin access to the room booking system for the entire building. I looked up Conference Room 4B, a small, internal-only room on the finance floor. No windows, booked, from 8:45 p.m. until 10 p.m. The meeting title, Internal Budget Review. Nimbus Arc. The attendees: Alex Griffin, Vanessa Cole. My fingers were trembling, but I kept scrolling. Back, weeks, months. Projected PL strategy. Attendees: Alex Griffin, Vanessa Cole. Q4 bonus structure review. Attendees: Alex Griffin, Vanessa Cole. Nimbus Arc financial planning. Attendees: Alex Griffin, Vanessa Cole. Dozens of them, all scheduled during the exact times Alex had late investor calls or dinners with the board. He wasn't just lying to me. He was meticulously documenting it. I lay back on the cold sheets on his side of the bed, staring at the ceiling, the blue light of the phone illuminating the room. I finally understood. I wasn't just paranoid, I was a fool. And this wasn't just starting. It had been happening for a very, very long time. 2 days later, I was sitting across from Mara at a loud wine bar in Lincoln Park, nowhere near the Loop. Mara is my oldest friend, my college roommate, and now a labor attorney who specialized in executive compensation and wrongful termination. She's a shark, and she was the first person I called. I didn't cry. I laid it out like a case study. The timeline, the server glitch that happened between 9 and 10 p.m., the meeting where Vanessa presented my work, the gaslighting from Alex, the room booking logs. Mara swirled her glass of Sancerre, her face impassive. "Okay, so he's an asshole, and she's a thief. You knew that already. What do you want? Riley?" "I don't know," I admitted, my voice low. "I want him to hurt. I want her exposed. I want my work back." "That's emotion," Mara said, leaning forward. "Emotion gets you a bad divorce settlement and maybe a box of your stuff from HR. You need to stop thinking like a wife and start thinking like a plaintiff. If you go to your CEO with a feeling that your husband is cheating and his mistress stole your work, you're the hysterical, jealous wife. You'll be managed out by the end of the quarter." She took a sip. "But if you go to them with irrefutable, time-stamped proof that a senior employee conspired with a C-suite executive to steal intellectual property, mislead a client, and potentially defraud the company on a bonus structure tied to that stolen work, well." A cold smile touched her lips. "That's a different conversation. This isn't about your marriage anymore. Riley, it's about his contract. It's about her employment. It's about the bonus pool for the entire Nimbus Arc deal. They are tangled. You need evidence of both. The infidelity gives them the motive. The theft gives you the crime. The next day, I took $400 in cash from an ATM far from our apartment. I took a $37 cab ride to a beige-colored suburb I'd never heard of, one that smelled like wet pavement and despair. Duke Holloway's office was on the second floor of a tired strip mall. Tucked between a tax prepper and a driving school, the room was small, suffocating, and smelled of decades of stale cigarette smoke and burned coffee. Duke was maybe 60, with a cheap suit, a face like a worn-out catcher's mitt, and the most tired eyes I'd ever seen. He looked like a man who had seen every possible variation of human betrayal, and was bored by all of them. I sat in the creaking plastic chair opposite his metal desk. I didn't use Alex's name. I used mine, my old name. "My name is Riley Bennett," I said. "I need you to follow my husband. I suspect he is having an affair with a coworker." I pushed the envelope of cash across the desk. He didn't count it. He just slid a one-page, boilerplate contract toward me. Daily rate plus expenses. Photos are extra. I don't do audio surveillance. It's illegal. I don't do break-ins. I just watched. "Just watch," I agreed, "and get photos." While Duke moved through the shadows of my husband's life, I began my own investigation in the bright, open-plan office. My grief had calcified. It had turned from a hot, aching wound into something cold, heavy, and sharp. It became a tool. I became a ghost in our own system. I was still supporting Vanessa on the Nimbus pitch, offering builds on her ideas, smiling in meetings, and dying inside. But at night, after everyone had left, I stayed. I wasn't creating. I was excavating. I dug into the backups of the server logs, and there it was. Access granted V, Cole, Tuesday, October 14th, 9:47 p.m. File Nimbus Strategy Framework V1, RB. Action. Copy to local drive. Access granted V. Cole, 9:48 p.m. Action file. Nimbus Strategy Framework V1, RB, PPTX. Action deleted from server. She hadn't just stolen it, she had tried to erase me. I screenshotted the logs. I unearthed my original, hand-drawn sketches from my notebook, the ones from the first 48 hours of research, and photographed them with my phone. The metadata on the image file proving they were created weeks before Vanessa's flash of inspiration. I dug up the audio voice notes I'd sent to the junior team, time-stamped, where I walked them through the radical transparency angle. Duke was methodical. The first envelope arrived a week later, passed to me in the aisle of a grocery store. It was grainy. Alex and Vanessa leaving a dark steakhouse in River North, laughing, his hand on her back, then walking into the lobby of the Viceroy, a boutique hotel Alex always claimed was too trendy. They walked in at 11:40 on a Wednesday, the night he'd told me he had an emergency investor dinner that would go past midnight. The second envelope came 3 days later. This one was digital. Duke had gotten into a position across from Alex's office building. Long lens shots, blurry, but legible. Alex at his desk, on his phone, a text message chain with Vanessa. "Vanessa. He'll sign the bonus agreement tomorrow. Then it's just a matter of time. Alex, we just have to hold on until the Nimbus pitch is over. Then we can stop hiding. Alex, I can't wait. It wasn't just a fling. It was a plan. A coordinated, professional conspiracy. Duke had one more thing. They're sloppy," he'd said, his voice a gravelly monotone over the phone. The girl, Vanessa. She sent a version of the pitch deck to the CEO from her personal email, probably so she could work on it at home. I pulled the file. He sent me the attachment. It was my deck. My words, my structure, just with her name on the cover. But he had also sent me the metadata. Author Riley Bennett, created October 12th, last modified by Vanessa Cole. The digital smoking gun, the original sin, still visible to anyone who knew how to look. The final package was the one that broke me. I met Duke in my car in a parking garage. He didn't say a word, just handed me a thick manila envelope and walked away. I opened it. They weren't grainy. Long-distance shots. These were close, clear, taken in the dim light of our own building's parking garage. Alex's car. He was in the driver's seat. She was leaning over the center console, her body angled toward him. They were kissing. It wasn't a guilty peck. It was a deep, consuming, intimate kiss. His eyes were closed. His hand was high on her thigh, fingers splayed, his thumb tucked just under the hem of her skirt. Her hand was cupping the back of his neck. They were not two people having an affair. They were two people in love. In that moment, the corporate theft and the personal betrayal fused. They were not two separate wounds. They were one. The theft wasn't just ambition. It was an extension of their intimacy. The affair wasn't just sex. It was the foundation for the conspiracy. They were stealing my work together. They were stealing my life. I went home. I sat on the sofa and waited. When Alex walked in, he was all smiles. "Hey, you're home early," he said, loosening his tie. I didn't move. I kept my voice perfectly, terrifyingly calm. "I was just thinking today, how is it, really, working so closely with Vanessa on the pitch?" He froze. His entire body went rigid. The casual smile vanished, replaced by a sharp, defensive glare. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It just seems like you two have gotten very close. You're spending a lot of time on the financial models for it." He tossed his keys onto the table with a clatter. "Oh, Jesus, Riley, is that what this is? I'm trying to close the single biggest deal in this agency's history, a deal that pays for this condo, for your clothes, for your life, and you're getting what paranoid, jealous—" He took a step toward me, his voice rising, turning the attack back on me. "You know, you've been so obsessed with this pitch, so buried in your work. You're starting to see enemies everywhere. Maybe you can't handle the pressure. Maybe you need to take a step back from the project entirely." He had, in less than a minute, confirmed everything. He used my own work ethic as a weapon. He used the very ambition he was exploiting to paint me as unstable. Later that night, I called my dad. He runs a small garage back in Colorado. He's a good man, a quiet man, a man of grease and steel. I didn't tell him about the work, the conspiracy. I just told him the simple, human part. "Dad, I think Alex is cheating on me." The line was silent for a long time. I heard the distant whine of an air ratchet. "Riles," he said finally, his voice thick. "Men, we're fools. I was a fool, once, a long time ago, when you were just a kid, before your mother got sick." I stopped breathing. I had never, ever heard this. "She found out," he continued, his voice rough. "And she forgave me. She let me earn it back. But it changed things. It changed me. I'm telling you this, honey, because revenge feels righteous. It feels hot and good for a minute, but it can burn you down to the studs. It can turn you into the one thing you hate. Don't let this turn you into someone else." His confession was meant to build a bridge, to show me a path to forgiveness, but all it did was show me how alone I was. His one mistake wasn't this. It wasn't a cold, calculated plot to destroy a life. He couldn't understand. I hung up. I went into our bathroom, the one with the sleek marble counters he'd picked out. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were dry. My face was a mask. I wasn't the crying wife. I wasn't the victim. I was something else. I slowly twisted my wedding ring, the 3-carat diamond he'd presented to me on a beach, calling it as solid as us. It was just a cold, hard stone. I pulled it off. My finger felt light, naked. I looked at the ring sitting in the palm of my hand. I didn't throw it. I didn't drop it down the drain. That would be an act of passion. This was a calculation. I closed my fist around it, the edges of the diamond cutting into my palm. I would not file for divorce. I would not confront him. I would not give them the satisfaction of a fight. or the warning they needed to cover their tracks. I would keep playing my part. I would be the supportive, slightly paranoid, overworked wife. I would let them climb all the way to the top of that ladder. I would let them get right onto that stage, right under the brightest spotlight, believing they had gotten away with it all. And then, I would kick the ladder out from under them. I opened my hand and slipped the ring back on. It felt like a costume. The official announcement came in a mandatory, all-hands meeting for the Nimbus ARC team. Mark, our CEO, stood at the front of the room, radiating false energy. "Team, we are in the final stretch," he beamed. "And to punch this home, we're making a small strategic pivot. We need a fresh, dynamic face to lead this pitch. Vanessa is going to be our front woman, our creative lead for the final presentation. She's got incredible energy, and she just gets this client." He gestured to me, a casual afterthought. "And Riley, of course, will be our supporting strategist, providing all the deep dive data and support Vanessa needs to shine. A killer 1-2 punch. A supporting strategist. It was a public execution, wrapped in the cheerful, insulting language of corporate synergy. It was a demotion so blatant, so clearly designed to sideline me, that the entire room fell silent. I could feel 20 pairs of eyes on my face, waiting for me to crack, to object, to cry. I smiled, a calm, supportive, team player smile. "That's a great call. Mark, Vanessa has a fantastic presence. I'm happy to support in any way that gets us the win." Alex, standing in the back of the room, visibly relaxed, Vanessa gave me a small, pitying smile, the smile of a victor. My war was not going to be fought in this room. From that moment on, I lived a double life. By day, I was the consummate professional. I sat in on rehearsals. I offered builds on Vanessa's slides, which were, of course, my slides. I'd watch her struggle to explain the data behind a key insight, and I would gently interject. What Vanessa is so brilliantly touching on here is the crossover between consumer trust and platform accountability. I would rewrite her clumsy, buzzword-filled taglines, handing her the perfect, polished copy. "Just a thought," I'd say. "Feel free to use it or lose it." She always used it. But every night, I was an archivist. Every track change I made was saved as a separate version. Every email where I suggested a new line of copy was blind copied to an encrypted personal email address. Every Slack conversation where I walked her through the logic was screenshotted, time-stamped, and uploaded to a secure, private cloud drive. I was building a case file that was as meticulous and irrefutable as the strategy they were stealing. The final pitch rehearsal was the moment the betrayal became truly, excruciatingly public. We were in the main boardroom with the executive team. Mark, Alex, Vanessa, and me. The support. Vanessa was leading the presentation, reading my words from the teleprompter. She was smooth, but hollow. She didn't understand the reason behind the words. When a VP of accounts asked a simple clarifying question about the data, she stumbled. I leaned forward to help, as was my role. The data from the initial user interviews showed. Alex cut me off. He didn't even look at me. He looked at the VP, a jovial, man-to-man expression on his face. "Riley just tends to get a little too deep in the weeds," he said, with a dismissive chuckle. "Vanessa," he continued, turning to her with that proud, proprietary smile, "has a much better grasp of the big picture, the 30,000-foot view. That's what's getting us the win." The room went quiet. It was a slap in the face, delivered by my husband in front of our entire senior leadership. He wasn't just supporting his mistress. He was actively, publicly diminishing me, using my own strength, my depth, my attention to detail as a weakness. He was painting me as a wonk, and her as a visionary. I just nodded, my face a perfect mask of neutrality. "Good point. Alex, the big picture is key." That night, I went home, opened my laptop, and decided it was time to contact the client. This was the most dangerous move. It couldn't be emotional. It couldn't be an accusation. It had to be a quiet, professional validation. I found the email for Sterling Hart, the Nimbus Arc CMO, the man I'd met only once in that very first magical workshop. I wrote the email from my official Viralik account. It was polite. It was sterile. Subject follow-up, Nimbus Arc. Initial workshop. Dear Sterling, I hope this note finds you well. As the Viralik team is finalizing the deck for the upcoming presentation, I was just reviewing my notes from our initial strategy workshop a few months back. That session where we first mapped out the radical transparency framework was such a productive and energizing day. I'm just reaching out as the original lead on that strategic framework to ensure the core of that idea. The one that you and I discussed regarding consumer vulnerability is still tracking in the version you're seeing. Looking forward to a successful partnership. Best, Riley Bennett, Senior Creative Strategist. I hit send. My heart was in my throat. This could backfire. He could forward it to Mark, and I'd be fired by morning for going around the team. He replied in under 10 minutes. Subject re-follow-up. Nimbus Arc. Initial workshop, Riley. It's good to hear from you. I'll be candid. I was confused when your name was absent from the last few preliminary decks our team received. That workshop was, without question, the single most valuable part of this entire pitch process. You defined the why for us. I'm quoting my own notes here. We have to be willing to expose our own shadows before someone else does it for us. That was your line. It's the entire reason we decided to go with Viralik. I'm troubled to hear there might be a disconnect. Let's make sure that why isn't being lost in translation. Sterling, my hands were shaking. He remembered. He remembered my words. He knew it was me. I wrote back, carefully, just adding a little more bait to the hook. Sterling, I'm so glad that session was the foundation. As you know, in any agency, ideas can be reinterpreted as they move through the internal approval process. I am simply available to ensure the original strategic integrity remains exactly as we discussed. My only priority is that Nimbus Arc gets the authentic campaign you signed up for. He replied almost instantly. Understood. I had my ally. The final piece of the puzzle fell into my lap 2 nights later. It was almost midnight. I was in a small, glass-walled huddle room on the 22nd floor, downloading the last of the server logs to my encrypted drive. Most of the office was dark, but the lights were on in the main boardroom. 50 feet away, I saw Mark and Alex in there, sharing a bottle of what looked like very expensive scotch. They looked triumphant. I couldn't hear them through the glass, but the huddle room I was in had a ceiling-mounted speaker for conference calls. Sometimes, if a call was just transferring, the audio link between the 2 rooms would stay live for a few seconds, and just as I was packing my bag, it happened. The speaker above my head crackled to life. They must have accidentally activated the room-to-room link. Cleaner this way, Alex was saying, his voice perfectly clear, echoing slightly in my tiny room. The main bonus pool is tied to the standard contract. But the real money, the 2.5% kicker on the full media buy, we run that through the holding company in Delaware. It never even touches Viralik's main books. It's a beautiful structure, Alex. Beautiful, Mark slurred, clearly a few glasses in. You get your cut, Vanessa gets hers, and the board is happy. It's the only way, Alex said, his voice cold and sober. The bonus is for delivering the win. Vanessa and I delivered it. This just makes sure the compensation reflects the contribution. I froze. This wasn't just a bonus, a 2.5% kicker on the Nimbus Arc media buy that was millions, 8 figures, at least, and they were running it through an offshore account. This wasn't an affair. This wasn't stolen credit. This was a conspiracy. This was financial fraud. They weren't just cutting me out. They were stealing from the company, from the shareholders, from the entire team whose hard work they were using to cash their illicit checks. My father's voice came back to me. Don't let this turn you into someone else. He was right. I wasn't just a scorned wife seeking revenge. I was a senior employee about to stop a massive corporate crime. I went home. I opened my laptop. I pulled up the encrypted email account I'd been using to talk to Sterling. Subject urgent. A matter of integrity. Sterling, I have just uncovered irrefutable proof that the ethical lapses at Vera Leak are not just about creative credit, they are financial, and they go to the very top. They have structured an offshore payment plan to skim millions from the Nimbus Arc contract, tied directly to Vanessa and Alex. I have the proof. It will all be on a thumb drive in my pocket. I will be at the awards gala on Friday. I understand this is where the contract is being signed. If you and Nimbus Arc truly believe in the radical transparency we discussed, I need you to do one thing for me. When you get on that stage, please ask one simple question in front of the press and the entire room: who was the person who outlined this campaign in the very first workshop? Leave the rest to me. I hit send. The trap was no longer just for my husband and his mistress. It was for the entire corrupt system that enabled them. Before the gala, before the pitch was even finalized, there was the Virilic Victory Retreat. That's what Mark, our CEO, called it in the all-caps email. It was a mandatory weekend retreat at a sterile, high-end resort on the shore of Lake Geneva in Wisconsin. The official purpose was team building and synergy celebration before the Nimbus Arc win. The unofficial purpose, I knew, was to anoint Vanessa and Alex as the company's new royal couple. I went, I packed a bag, drove for 2 hours, and put on the mask of the supportive strategist. The first night was a bacchanal of corporate self-congratulation. We were in a private banquet hall with an open bar, food stations, and a bad DJ. Everyone was drinking the expensive, company-funded wine too fast, laughing too loud, their faces flushed with the promise of massive bonuses. I sat at a table near the back, nursing a club soda with lime. I was a spectator. I watched Alex hold court by the bar, his suit jacket off, looking relaxed and powerful. I watched Vanessa move through the crowd, a glass of champagne in her hand, accepting congratulations for a pitch she hadn't written, and I watched them watch each other. It wasn't subtle, not to me, not anymore. It was a shared glance over the head of a junior designer. It was a small, private smile when their eyes met across the room. It was the way his gaze lingered on her, a beat too long, filled with a possessive pride that had nothing to do with work. They thought they were invisible, hidden by the noise and the crowd. They were fools. At 10 p.m., Mark stumbled to the small stage, tapping a knife against his glass. "A toast," he boomed, his voice thick with scotch. "A toast to the future, to the contract that's going to change everything." He raised his glass higher. "And to the two people who made it happen, the power duo who snatched victory from the jaws of defeat, to Alex Griffin and Vanessa Cole." The room erupted. Alex and Vanessa. People shouted. My team, my colleagues, they all drank, they all cheered. I stood up with them. I raised my club soda. I smiled until my face ached, and I watched my husband put his arm around Vanessa's waist right there, in front of everyone, and pull her in for a one-armed, celebratory hug that was an act of pure, arrogant ownership. "To Alex and Vanessa," I mouthed, the glass touching my lips. My throat was so dry, I couldn't have swallowed if I'd wanted to. An hour later, the party began to fracture. People drifted off in small groups, toward the bonfire on the beach or back to their rooms. The DJ was packing up. I saw Vanessa standing alone for a moment, checking her phone near the exit to the main terrace. This was it. I walked over, my footsteps silent on the thick carpet. "Hey!" She jumped, startled. "Oh, Riley. Hey, you scared me." "Sorry," I said, offering a small, tired smile. "It's suffocating in there, isn't it? I was going to get some fresh air. Want to join?" She looked hesitant, glancing back toward the bar where Alex was now in a deep, head-to-head with Mark. She was probably waiting for him. "Just for a minute," I said. "It's a clear night?" She nodded, forcing a bright smile. "Sure. Why not? My head is spinning." "I bet it is." I pushed open the heavy glass door, and the blast of cold, damp November air hit us. The terrace was dark, overlooking the black, still water of the lake. The only light came from the eerie, chemical blue glow of the resort's empty swimming pool, casting long, strange shadows. The thumping bass of the party was instantly replaced by the high-pitched, incessant chirping of crickets. We walked to the stone balustrade, two women in corporate casual, staring into the darkness. She was my mentee. I was her boss. She was sleeping with my husband. I let the silence stretch, just long enough for it to become awkward. "So," she said finally, her voice too high. "Crazy night, huh?" Mark's enthusiastic. "He's happy," I said, my voice flat. "You're the new star." "Oh, God. No," she laughed, a practiced, self-deprecating sound. "It was a total team effort. I couldn't have. Your original research was just so solid. The foundation for everything." She was trying to placate me, to be gracious. It was pathetic. "I remember your first week," I said, my voice quiet, conversational, turning to look at her. The blue light hollowed out her cheekbones, made her eyes look like dark sockets. "You were terrified. You'd come over from that little shop in Dallas, and you didn't know how to read a media plan. We stayed until 10 p.m. in the war room. Remember I walked you through the difference between reach and frequency, and you took notes on a yellow legal pad?" She looked confused by the nostalgia. Yeah, I remember. You were so helpful. Riley, you taught me so much." "I did," I said. "I taught you how to build an insight. I taught you how to write a strategic deck. I taught you how to present with confidence." I paused, my voice hardening, losing all its warmth. "But I never taught you this part. You must have picked it up on your own." I turned to face her fully. "When did you start sleeping with my husband?" The question landed in the dark. The crickets were the only sound. Her face, in the blue light, was a mask of pure, sudden terror. The blood drained from it. "What?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "What are you? I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't," I said. My voice was low, but it cut through the night air. "Don't lie. I'm so tired of the lies. Just tell me, when did it start?" "Riley, you're not making sense. You're upset. The demotion." "The demotion." I laughed. A short, sharp, ugly sound. "Is that what you call it? This is simpler." I pulled my phone from my pocket. I didn't open the metadata files. I didn't open the server logs. I opened the photo gallery. I held the screen up. I didn't shove it in her face. I just held it between us. The first photo, Alex and her, walking into the Viceroy Hotel lobby, 11:40 p.m. I swiped. The next photo. The blurry text message. "I can't wait until the pitch is over and we can stop hiding." I swiped again. The final photo. The one that broke me. In Alex's car. The kiss. His hand on her thigh. Her breath hitched. A sound, half sob, half gasp, tore out of her throat. The polished, confident, creative lead evaporated. The mask didn't just crack. It shattered. She was just a girl. In over her head. And she was crying. Her hands flying to her mouth. "Oh, God," she choked out. "Oh, God. Riley, you didn't, what?" I asked, my voice like ice. "You didn't mean to. You didn't know he was married. You didn't know you were stealing my work at the same time." I put the phone back in my pocket. "He told me," she sobbed, backing away, slumping against one of the patio chairs. "He told me you two were over, that you were just work colleagues, that you hadn't been in love for years. He said he was going to leave you." "Of course he did," I said, standing over her. "He promised," she whispered, looking up at me, her face a mess of tears and running mascara. "He promised me. He said after the Nimbus art contract was signed, after the bonuses were paid, we could be together. He said he'd divorce me, start a new life with you, a life built on my career. He told me to put my name on the deck," she stammered, desperate now, trying to find an ally, even in me. "He said it was just a formality. He said I deserved the lead title for all the work I was doing, for managing the vision. He said it was just corporate stuff. I didn't know he was setting up an offshore account. Her eyes went wide. She had said too much. So you knew about that too, I said, nodding slowly. You're not just an adulterer, Vanessa. You're a co-conspirator. That's a new line on the resume. No, I'm not. I just love him, she wailed. Love, I scoffed. You don't even know what that is. I let her cry for another 10 seconds, then I shut it down. Get up, I said. She flinched. Get up. She staggered to her feet, wiping her nose on the back of her expensive sleeve. I'm not going to yell, I said, my voice a blade in the dark. I'm not going to hit you. I'm not going to tell my husband, or your boss, not tonight. I stepped closer, close enough to smell the wine on her breath. You have 2 weeks, until the night of the awards gala. You and Alex are going to walk into Mark's office, and you are going to confess everything. You are going to confess to the affair. You are going to confess to the intellectual property theft. You are going to confess to the offshore bonus structure. You are going to tell HR exactly how you two conspired to steal my work and defraud this company. You will do this, or I will. I can't. If you don't, I continued, ignoring her, I will do it for you, but I won't do it in Mark's office. I will do it on that stage, at the gala, in front of the client, in front of the press, in front of his wife. I have the server logs. I have the metadata. I have the photos. I have the emails about the offshore account. I have everything. Vanessa. And I promise you, I will burn you both to the ground without thinking twice. She stared at me, her whole body shaking. She was seeing me for the first time, not as the work big sister, not as the jealous wife, but as the person who held the pin to her entire life. You have 2 weeks, I repeated. Choose. I turned and walked back toward the glass door, leaving her to crumble by the dark, empty pool. The crickets were still chirping. I walked back into the party, into the light and the noise and the laughter. I felt nothing, no pity, no triumph. My father had been worried I would turn into something I hated. He was too late. I was already there. I was just better at it than they were. The 2-week ultimatum I'd given Vanessa was a countdown to the gala, with 1 day to go. The final pitch rehearsal was scheduled. It was a full dress rehearsal, not for the client, but for our team, to ensure the performance was flawless for the gala's live signing. We were in the main boardroom, the one with the 80-inch screen and the expensive, uncomfortable chairs. The script was locked. The slide deck, my slide deck, was polished to a high gloss, corporate sheen. The roles were clearly defined. Vanessa, as creative lead, would deliver the opening and the core radical transparency insight. Mark, our CEO, would handle the grand vision and partnership. Alex would present the ROI, the financial models he and I had once built together, now twisted to serve his new narrative. And I, the supporting strategist, was there to sit in the front row of the presentation, nod enthusiastically, and jump in only if a deeply technical data question was asked. I was a prop, a human safety net they didn't think they'd need. Okay, people, let's do this, Mark said, straightening his tie. This isn't just a pitch. This is the victory lap. Let's make it sharp. As they were testing the microphones, the main screen flickered to life. Mr. Hart is patching in, the AV tech announced. Sterling Hart's face appeared, life-sized. He was in his office in Palo Alto, looking tired but sharp. Mark, Alex, team, he said, nodding. Just wanted to check in before the big show tomorrow night. Are you all feeling confident? More than confident, Sterling, Mark boomed. Vanessa is about to walk you through the final flow. It's poetry. Sterling smiled, a thin, polite smile. His eyes scanned the room, bypassing Vanessa, bypassing Mark. His gaze landed on me, sitting just off camera. He looked at me for a beat, then 2. It was just a fraction longer than was polite. It was a look of confirmation. Are you ready? I gave him nothing, a blank, professional mask. He turned his attention back to our CEO. Mark, one quick question on staffing. Assuming this all goes as planned tomorrow, I want to talk about the account team. This new strategy is sensitive. It requires the nuance we discussed in that first workshop. Will Riley be part of the core team managing the account? Post-launch. The air in the room went still. Mark was visibly blindsided. He laughed, a short, nervous bark. Well, Sterling, as you know, Riley is our top strategist, but we see her more on the new business side, the big picture development. We're building a dedicated team led by Vanessa to handle the day-to-day execution. It was a masterful corporate non-answer. No. Sterling stared at him. I see. I just want to ensure the person who wrote the strategy is the one protecting it. But, by all means, let's see the poetry. Vanessa, who had been pale since the retreat, went white. Her eyes darted to me, a look of raw, desperate, silent pleading. Help me. Call it off. Don't make me do this. Alex, standing just behind her, saw the look. He moved, placing his hand on her shoulder and giving it a sharp, proprietary squeeze. It was a gesture that looked supportive to the rest of the room. But I knew what it was. It was a warning. Don't you dare! Vanessa's face crumpled for a split second, then hardened. She turned back to the screen. I met her gaze one last time, and I just slightly, almost imperceptibly, raised one eyebrow. Your chance is over. Thank you, Sterling, Vanessa said, her voice a strained, brittle whisper. Let's begin. What is radical transparency? After the rehearsal, as I was packing my bag, Alex caught me by the elevator. Hey, he said, his voice low and intimate, the voice he used to use just for me. I looked at him. Hey, you were really quiet in there. You okay? Just focused on the win, Alex, like you said, team player. He smiled, relieved. He actually believed he was in control. Good, good. Listen, Riles, what are you doing tonight? Let's go to dinner, just us, like we used to. Let's go to Gibson's, our place. Gibson's, the classic Chicago steakhouse where we'd celebrated our engagement, where we'd celebrated my last 3 promotions. The place he'd taken me when my mother passed away. He was weaponizing our history. He was trying to buy my silence, to manage my paranoia one last time before the finish line. Using a 10-ounce fillet and a side of creamed spinach, I should have said no, but I was curious. I wanted to see the last act of the performance. Okay, I said. Like old times. That sounds nice. We sat in a dark, red leather booth. The air smelled of seared meat and old money. He ordered a $30 glass of Cabernet, the one he always got. He was the perfect picture of the successful, attentive husband. He leaned across the table, taking my hand. He was warm. Mine was cold. Riles, I know I've been distant these past few months, he said, his voice a perfect imitation of sincerity. He stroked my knuckles with his thumb. This Nimbus deal, it's been a monster. The pressure on me, on my team, it's been insane. I just nodded, watching him. Go on, lie. But it's almost over, he continued, squeezing my hand. After tomorrow night, after we sign that contract, everything is going to be better. I promise. It'll be just you and me again. We can take that trip to Italy we talked about. Maybe we can finally start talking about kids. There it was, the ultimate promise, the one he knew I'd been holding on to. He was offering me the future we'd planned, the one he was actively building with another woman, as a bribe. I smiled. A thin, tight smile. I let him think it was working. That does sound nice. Alex, I said, my voice soft. I didn't pull my hand away. I let him hold it. I let the silence sit for a moment, just enjoying the look of relief on his face. Then I leaned in, as if I were sharing a secret. I just have one silly question, I said, my tone light, almost playful. Anything, he said, smiling, generous. What if it all went wrong tomorrow? Just hypothetically. What if, Tomorrow night, at the gala, someone I don't know stood up and said that Vanessa didn't actually write the campaign. His smile didn't just fade, it evaporated. His hand instinctively tightened on mine, his grip suddenly painful. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice flat, cold. "It's just a hypothetical," I said, shrugging, keeping my voice light. "What if it just came out, that's how I wrote it? All of it? What would you do?" He stared at me for a long, terrible second, and then he did the worst thing he could have possibly done. He laughed. It was a condescending, sharp laugh. He dropped my hand. "Jesus, Riley, are you still on that?" he said, shaking his head, as if to a child. "Don't be paranoid. It's unbecoming. Everyone knows Vanessa is the lead on this. She stepped up. You're part of the team. That's your story. Stick to it." He picked up his wine glass. "No one would believe you. Anyway," he said, taking a sip, "it would just be sad." He had signed his own death warrant. He had confirmed he was unredeemable. I got home before him. He'd stayed behind to pay the bill and, I assumed, to call Vanessa and tell her the Riley problem was handled. I walked into our dark apartment and went straight to the kitchen, where I poured his $30 glass of wine down the drain. My phone buzzed. It was my dad. I answered, stepping out onto the small balcony, the cold Chicago air biting at my face. "Hey, Dad? Riles. You sound far away. You okay? That thing with your husband?" "It's more than that. Dad, it's happening tomorrow night. All of it." The line was quiet. "You sound certain," he said. Not with judgment, just observation. "Are you sure this is the path you want, this revenge?" "It's not just revenge anymore," I said, looking down at the traffic 22 floors below. "It's bigger than that. He's not just a cheater, he's a criminal. He's conspiring with our CEO to steal millions of dollars from the company, from the shareholders. If this fraud gets discovered after the contract is signed, the stock will tank. Hundreds of people on my team. People who've worked there for 20 years, they'll all lose their jobs. I'm stopping that from happening." I was justifying it to him, but I was also justifying it to myself. I needed my motives to be pure. My dad sighed. I could hear the garage in the background, the sound of an air hose hissing. "Well," he said, his voice rough, "that's a hell of a thing, but I'll say it again. Riley, just remember, after that night, after you've done what you have to do, you still have to live with yourself. Don't let how you do this turn you into something you don't recognize. Don't become them." "I won't, Dad," I lied. "I'll see you at Christmas." I hung up. I walked back inside. The apartment was silent. Alex wasn't home yet. I went into his study. Just as I'd expected, he'd left it open. He'd fallen asleep on the sofa the night before. His laptop was on, glowing in the dark, and on the screen was the file, the post-Nimbus ARC financial model, the one with the hidden tabs, the one detailing the Delaware holding company and the executive kicker payout, the one showing the 2.5% transfer to accounts linked to him and Vanessa. My father's words echoed in my head, "Don't become them." But to stop them, I had to. I pulled a tiny, nondescript USB drive from my pocket, the one Duke had given me, the one that looked like a cheap corporate freebie. I slid it into the port. The file was large. My hand was steady on the mouse. Drag, drop, copying, a progress bar, 10 seconds, 15, copy complete. I ejected the drive. I closed the laptop. I didn't wipe the screen. I didn't change a thing. I stood in the dark living room, the tiny piece of plastic and metal in my fist. It was the only thing in the world that felt real. My dad was wrong. All the bridges were already burned. I was just the one holding the match. The ballroom at the Crystal Crown Hotel was not just opulent. It was offensive. It was an assault of gold leaf, velvet, and chandeliers so large they looked like they could crush a small car. The air was suffocating, thick with the conflicting perfumes of Chicago's elite and the heat from 1,000 bodies packed into one space, all pretending this was just another Friday night. But it wasn't. This was the main event. Vera Leak Dynamics, my company, My husband's company had paid a fortune for the privilege. This wasn't just the annual Midwest Marketing Guild Gala, it was a live-streamed, press-heavy, public spectacle designed for one purpose: the official signing of the Nimbus Arc contract. It was a coronation, and the stage was set. I walked in without a lanyard. I didn't have one. My company ID, my keycard, my entire professional identity was sitting dead at the bottom of my purse. I had sent my resignation email to Human Resources 2 days prior. A polite, brief note citing personal reasons. My last official day was this coming Monday. I was already a ghost, but the event planners hadn't gotten the memo. My name was still on the list, still on the seating chart at a table in the proverbial Siberia of the ballroom. Table 42, row 27. Riley Bennett, Senior Creative Strategist. It was a title that no longer meant anything. I arrived early. I wanted to watch them prepare. Through a gap in the curtains leading to the backstage area, I caught a glimpse of the VIP green room. Vanessa was there, a whirlwind of activity surrounding her. She was already poured into the silver sequin dress, a makeup artist brushing shimmer onto her collarbones, a stylist adjusting the fall of her perfect hair. She was practicing her speech into a handheld mirror, her voice high and breathless. "I am just so humbled, so incredibly grateful," she rehearsed. "And I have to give a special, heartfelt thank you to Alex Griffin, our CFO, who always believed in my talent, right from day one." The stylist, a man with a dramatic scarf, clasped his hands together. "Oh, honey, that's beautiful. They'll eat it up. So genuine. Genuine." I turned away, a cold, bitter taste in my mouth, and then I saw Alex, my husband. He was in his element, his $2,000 Tom Ford suit making him look like the king of the room. He was over by the main AV booth, conferring intently with the tech crew, pointing at the massive LED screen that hung over the stage. He was the CFO, personally ensuring the projected revenue numbers, the glorious ROI figures, were all perfectly lit and impressively large. He was managing the presentation of his own triumph. He looked sharp, he looked powerful, and he kept checking his phone. I knew exactly what he was doing. I felt my own phone vibrate. Duke Holloway's final gift, the cloned SIM, was still active. A new text message, sent from Alex's phone just 10 minutes ago, lit up my screen. It was to Vanessa. "Tonight, everything is officially ours. I love you." He thought he was sealing their pact. He was just providing me with one last, perfect piece of time-stamped evidence. In the grand foyer, Mark, our CEO, was basking in the glow of the press. A reporter from the Tribune's business section was recording him. "Mark, this is a massive win. What's the secret at Verilique?" Mark puffed out his chest. "It's our culture. Plain and simple. We find the brightest minds, and we empower them. We are dedicated to promoting and empowering talented women. We see a rising star, like Vanessa Cole, and we don't just give her a seat at the table. We give her the head of the table. She is the future of this agency." He was using Vanessa's betrayal, their grand conspiracy, as a PR angle about female empowerment. It was so brazen, so perfectly, disgustingly corporate. I almost had to admire it. I made my way toward the ballroom, slipping past the velvet rope that separated the VIP area from the rest of us. The door to the green room was ajar. I heard Vanessa's laugh, a high, trilling sound, giddy with victory. "This is it," she was saying to someone, probably the PR manager. "This is the night of my life." I slowed my pace, and I saw them. There was a tall, gold-framed mirror just inside the room, angled toward the hallway. For 3 perfect, terrible seconds, I saw their reflection as clearly as if I were in the room with them. Alex had slipped in. His back was to the door, but his reflection was clear. He had his hand on her waist, on the bare skin exposed by the cut of the dress. He gave her a sharp, possessive squeeze. He leaned in, his lips brushing her ear. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw her reflection tilt her head back and laugh, her body relaxing against his, It was a silent, cinematic confirmation of everything: their partnership, their intimacy, their absolute, shared confidence that they had won. Then he was gone. Slipping back out a side door, I walked away. I felt nothing. The rage was gone, replaced by a cold, heavy certainty. I found my seat in the back, the room buzzing with 1,000 conversations, the clinking of glasses, the sound of an orchestra tuning up. My phone vibrated again. A different number. Sterling Hart. I've read everything you sent. The file is damning. My legal team is on standby. If there are legal troubles stemming from this, Nimbus Arc will cooperate fully with the investigators. Tonight, truth first, it was the final piece. My air cover. My ally wasn't just an ally. He was a weapon. I opened my small black clutch, the one I'd bought specifically for this night because it looked elegant and anonymous. Inside, my arsenal. It was all so light. The USB drive, black, cheap, the kind they give away at trade shows. It contained the complete offshore financial model, the multi-million-dollar kicker, the routing numbers, the executive kicker payout structure. Beneath it, a few folded pieces of paper, the printout of the server log, showing access granted v. 9:47 p.m. Action deleted. The printout of the metadata report, author Riley Bennett, last modified. By Vanessa Cole, and at the very bottom, one 4x6 glossy photo, the one Duke took in the parking garage, the kiss, his hand, her face. It was an entire corporate collapse, small enough to fit in the palm of my hand. The ballroom lights dimmed. A single, dramatic spotlight hit the stage. The drum roll began. The MC, the local news anchor with the perfect hair, strode to the lectern. Good evening, Chicago, and welcome to the night we've all been waiting for. The applause was deafening. And now, he continued, his voice booming with manufactured excitement, the moment of the night, a partnership that will redefine the industry. Please put your hands together and welcome to the stage the executive team from Viralik Dynamics and the Chief Marketing Officer of Nimbus Arc, Sterling Hart. The orchestra swelled, the spotlights flared, tracking them as they walked from the wings. Mark, beaming, waving to the crowd. Vanessa, in her silver dress, glowing, looking every inch the star Mark had proclaimed her to be. And Alex, my husband, walking beside her. His hand just grazed the small of her back. He looked proud. He looked triumphant. But I was close enough, even from row 27, to see the muscle twitching in his jaw, to see that his hand, as it rested on the lectern, was trembling. I sat forward in my chair. The air in the ballroom was hot and suddenly perfectly still. The noise, the chatter, the clinking glasses, it all faded away. This was the stage they had built. This was the lie they had crafted. This was the moment they had stolen. They stood there, bathed in the white-hot light, in front of their clients, their colleagues, and a dozen live-streaming cameras, ready to take their bow. They had no idea that the trap door was already open beneath their feet. Sterling Hart stepped to the lectern, and a hush fell over the room. He was not a showman, and his quiet, academic presence was a stark contrast to the MC's slick energy. "Thank you," he began, his voice calm and measured, filling the ballroom. Viralik Dynamics presented us with a campaign built on two simple, but very difficult words: transparency and accountability. He smiled, a thin professional smile. It's a campaign that deeply resonated with Nimbus Arc's new mission: to rebuild trust. You must first be trustworthy. The room, filled with Viralik employees and industry peers, erupted in applause. Alex and Vanessa, standing beside Sterling, looked magnificent. Vanessa preened, her silver dress catching the light. Alex allowed himself a small, controlled smile of triumph. They were accepting praise for my words, my philosophy. Sterling let the applause die down. He held up a hand. "And before we sign the final contract tonight," he continued, I want to be absolutely certain that we are entering into a partnership with people who truly, fundamentally, understand that value. He paused. He did not look at Vanessa. He did not look at Alex. His gaze traveled over the front rows, past the VIPs, past the mid-level executives, all the way to the back of the room, all the way to table 42. His eyes locked on mine. He leaned into the microphone. "Before we proceed," he said, his voice now carrying a sharp, undeniable edge, "I would like to make sure we are honoring the true source of this idea. I would like to ask Ms. Riley Bennett to please come to the stage." It was not a request. It was a summons. 1,000 heads turned. A wave of confusion rippled through the ballroom. The live feed cameras, unsure where to point, panned awkwardly across the crowd. "Riley Bennett," I heard someone at the next table whisper. "The strategist, I thought she was just supporting me." "Isn't that Alex Griffin's wife?" On stage, the tableau had frozen. Vanessa's face was a mask of sheer, white-hot panic. Her smile was gone, her mouth slightly open. Alex, my husband, his eyes were wide, his entire body rigid. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. He looked at me, his stare a mixture of pure terror and murderous rage. I stood up. My simple black dress felt like armor. My hands were not shaking. I began the long walk. Down the narrow aisle, my footsteps silent on the thick, patterned carpet. I kept my eyes fixed on the stage. I walked past my colleagues, their faces a blur of shock and confusion. I could feel the heat of 1,000 stares. I was no longer a ghost. I was the bomb. I reached the small set of stairs and ascended. I stood on the stage, the white-hot spotlights blinding me. I was now part of the scene, standing a few feet from my husband and his mistress. Sterling Hart gave me a small, grim nod of welcome. He turned back to the audience. "As I was saying, I want to talk about transparency. In our very first workshop for this campaign, the true creative lead said something that has stuck with me for months." He looked down at his notes, though I knew he didn't need them. She said, "If we want to regain trust, we have to be willing to expose our own shadows before someone else does it for us." He looked up, scanning the shocked faces on stage. He looked directly at Vanessa. "That line," Sterling said, his voice dangerously quiet, "is the heart of this campaign. Does anyone else up here?" He gestured to Mark, Alex, and Vanessa. "Remember saying that silence, dead, absolute silence." Vanessa opened her mouth, a desperate, gasping sound. "It's a team effort. Sterling," she stammered, grabbing the closest microphone. "Ideas are a collaboration." "That's not what the audio file says," Sterling said, cutting her off. He signaled to the AV booth, and suddenly, the room was filled with my voice. "So the why isn't just about an apology, it's about radical transparency. It means we have to be willing to expose our own shadows before someone else does it for us. That's the only way they'll ever believe us again." It was the recording from the workshop, my voice, clear, confident, and utterly in charge, laying out the entire framework, the exact words Vanessa had claimed as her own. Sterling signaled again. The audio cut off. The entire ballroom was silent. The press row was no longer silent. They were scribbling, typing, their cameras now focused entirely on the unfolding drama. Sterling motioned for me to take the microphone. I did. I turned, for the first time, and looked directly at the three of them. At Mark, whose face was purple with rage. At Vanessa, who was physically shaking, tears welling in her eyes. And Alex, my husband, his face was a void. All the blood had drained from it. "I used to believe in a team effort," I said, my voice amplified, ringing through the room. It was as calm and steady as Sterling's. "I truly did, until I realized this team was willing to erase my name from the story to protect their own interests and their own profits." I turned back to the audience. "I am Riley Bennett. I am the author of the Nimbus Art campaign." I didn't need my notes. I didn't need my props. I had the facts. The metadata on the file Vanessa Cole presented as her own clearly lists me as the author, created on October 12th. The server logs, which I have, show that same file being accessed and deleted by Vanessa Cole from my drive at 9:47 p.m. on October 14th. I also have the internal emails from Alex Griffin, requesting a change in ownership on the deck, claiming the board wants a fresh face to lead. "That is a lie," Mark shouted, lunging for a microphone. "Is it?" Sterling's voice cut through. "Then perhaps you can explain this." He signaled the AV booth one last time, the massive LED screen above their heads, the one Alex had so carefully prepared, split in two. On the left, a perfect, high-resolution image of the pitch deck cover. Nimbus Arc, a strategy for radical transparency, presented by Vanessa Cole, creative director. On the right, a scanned image of the preliminary strategic framework I had sent to Sterling's team through official channels months ago. They were identical, word for word, slide for slide. My name was on one. Hers was on the other. A collective gasp went through the room. This was not an accusation. This was a receipt. Vanessa let out a small, strangled sob and took a step back, right out of the spotlight. Mark looked from the screen to Alex, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. Alex just stood there, paralyzed. I took the microphone again. "I am not here to ask for my job back," I said, my voice ringing with clarity. "I resigned from Viraleak Dynamics 2 days ago." Another gasp from the Viraleak tables. "And I'm not here to ask for compensation for this campaign, because the client has already taken care of that." I looked at Sterling. He stepped forward. "Nimbus Arc will, obviously, not be signing a contract with Viraleak Dynamics tonight," Sterling announced. The room exploded in murmurs. The breach of ethics, the intellectual property theft, and the blatant fraud are staggering. We cannot, in good conscience, partner with a company that operates this way. Mark looked like he was going to be sick. "Instead," Sterling continued, "we have signed a letter of intent to partner with a new strategic consultancy, effective immediately. A new agency that will be built on the very principles of transparency we're discussing, an agency called North Circle Storyworks." He paused, then looked at me. "It is an agency founded by and led by Ms. Riley Bennett," another shockwave. "And North Circle Storyworks," Sterling added, his voice like steel, "will be extending offers of employment to any Viraleak employee who was not a party to this deception, effective Monday." He had just, in one sentence, gutted my former company and offered a life raft to my entire team, but I wasn't finished. There was one last thing. "And as for the profits I mentioned," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. I reached into my clutch. I pulled out the small, black, cheap USB drive. I did not walk to the lectern. I walked past a stunned Alex, past a weeping Vanessa, to the edge of the stage, where 2 men in dark suits had quietly appeared. Sterling's legal team. "This drive," I announced, holding it up for the cameras to see, "contains the complete financial records, pulled from the CFO's own laptop, of a secondary, offshore payment structure, a structure designed by Mr. Griffin and Mr. Chen." I nodded at our CEO. "To skim millions of dollars in an executive kicker from this very contract, a structure that constitutes wire fraud, and a breach of their fiduciary duty to their own shareholders." I placed the USB drive in the lawyer's waiting hand. Alex made a sound, a low, animal sound. Mark lunged, not at me, but at Alex. "You idiot!" he roared, right into the hot mic. Cameras flashed, a blinding, chaotic strobe, capturing the perfect, pristine stage as it descended into pure, unadulterated chaos. My husband's face, white as a sheet, my CEO, his mask of civility ripped away, revealing the raw greed beneath. My work was done. The stage dissolved into chaos. That's the only word for it. The moment the word fraud was spoken, the orchestra music died with a pathetic squeal. Security guards, who had been lingering by the exits, surged forward, creating a human wall between the stage and the press, whose cameras were flashing like a seizure-inducing strobe light. The live stream feed cut to a generic gala intermission slide. The gala was over. Two of Sterling's dark-suited lawyers, with the practiced efficiency of federal agents, flanked Mark and Alex. "Gentlemen, a word, in private." Mark, his face a mottled, apoplectic red, started to shout, but one of the lawyers simply said, "Now," and they were frog-marched off the stage toward a side exit. I watched Alex go. He didn't look at me. He looked broken, not remorseful, just broken, like a machine that had suddenly, catastrophically failed. I was left on the stage with a weeping Vanessa and a flustered-looking MC. A woman I recognized from Human Resources, our senior VP. A bulldog named Cynthia marched up the stairs, grabbed Vanessa firmly by the elbow, and said, "We need to talk." I saw her, a few moments later, frantically typing on her phone. I knew what it was. The immediate temporary suspension pending investigation email, the corporate guillotine. Sterling Hart simply walked over to me, ignoring the chaos. He reached out and shook my hand, a firm, dry grip. "That was more than I anticipated," he said, his voice low. "But you were right. Truth first. My team will be in touch with yours on Monday. Welcome to Nimbus Arc, Ms. Bennett." He nodded, then turned and was gone, surrounded by his own security, leaving me alone in the wreckage. I found my way off the stage to a small, adjoining conference room that had been set up as a lounge. I needed a glass of water. I needed a minute for the adrenaline to recede. The door burst open. It was Alex. He'd clearly shaken off the lawyers. For a moment, he was alone. He didn't look broken anymore. He looked rabid. "You," he spat, his voice a low, venomous growl. He slammed the door shut. We were alone. No audience. No microphones. "You did this," he seethed, stalking toward me. You bitch. You destroyed everything." "I destroyed everything?" I asked. My voice was quiet. The adrenaline was gone, leaving only a vast, cold calm. I wasn't aware I had that power. "You ruined the company. You ruined my career. You ruined us," he shouted, his face inches from mine, his hands balled into fists. He was the victim. He truly, genuinely believed he was the victim. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at him. The man I had loved since I was 20 years old. The man whose face was now twisted into something ugly, something I didn't recognize at all. "No, Alex," I said, my voice flat. "I just pulled back the curtain. Everything you see burning down, you built that. All by yourself." I held up my left hand. I slowly, deliberately, twisted my wedding ring, the 3-carat diamond. "I didn't invent Vanessa," I said, pulling the ring off my finger. It slid off easily. "I didn't invent the offshore account in Delaware. I didn't invent the lies you told about board meetings or the promises you whispered to her in the parking garage." I held the ring out to him, in the palm of my hand. He just stared at it, breathing hard. "This," I said, "is just a piece of metal and carbon. It's not a shield. It's not a license. It's not an excuse." He wouldn't take it. "You didn't just cheat on me, Alex. You tried to erase me, and you used my own husband to do it." I let my hand fall, and the ring clattered to the cheap conference room carpet, rolling to a stop by his $2,000 shoe. The door opened again. It was Vanessa. She was being escorted by Cynthia from HR, but she tore her arm away when she saw Alex. "Alex," she cried, her voice raw, her perfect makeup a disastrous, streaked mess. "Alex, say something. Tell them it wasn't what you said." She ran to him, grabbing the lapels of his suit, a desperate, broken woman appealing to her savior. "Tell them. Alex, please." Alex looked at her. His face, which had been a mask of rage for me, shifted. It turned to ice, a cold, reptilian, absolute contempt. He peeled her fingers off his suit, one by one, and pushed her back. Hard. "Tell them what," he hissed, his voice dripping with venom. "Tell them how you manipulated me, how you lied, how you fabricated this entire thing. How did you get obsessed with me? I thought we were just sharing ideas. I thought you were just ambitious. I had no idea you were insane." It was the most cowardly act I had ever witnessed. He threw her to the wolves, not just to save himself, but to actively paint himself as her victim. Vanessa just stared at him. The last shred of hope, of love, of delusion, just died in her eyes. It was a horrible, fascinating thing to watch. The fire just went out. She stopped crying. Her hands fell to her sides. She turned, slowly, and looked at me. Her eyes were dead, but they were clear. "You won," she whispered, her voice a dry rasp. "It wasn't a game," I said. "You won," she repeated. Ignoring me, she took a step toward me, away from Alex. "But you need to know something about him." She jerked her chin toward Alex, who was now straightening his suit, his face a mask of practiced professional concern. "He will do this to anyone," Vanessa said, her voice low, intense, a shared, bitter truth. "He will do this to the next woman, and the next. He will find their strength, and he will use it, and he will feed on it until they're hollow. And then he will find someone new. Don't for a second think you're different, or that you were special." It was a final, desperate attempt to wound me, to pull me down to her level, to make us two victims of the same man. I looked at her. I felt nothing, no pity, no sisterhood. "You're probably right," I said, my voice still quiet. "He probably will." I took a step toward her. "But here's the difference. Vanessa, you get to choose your next man. I hope you choose a better one, but you don't get to change the fact that you chose to steal my work. You don't get to blame him for the server logs, or the metadata, or the lies you told on that stage. Your affair, that's his sin too. Your theft, that's all yours. Those two things are not the same." I placed the responsibility, the choice, right back in her hands. She flinched, as if I'd slapped her. Cynthia, the HR bulldog, stepped forward. "That's enough. Vanessa, my office, now." She took her by the arm, and this time, Vanessa went, a hollowed-out, silver-sequined shell. Alex and I were alone again. "Get out," he whispered. "I'm already gone," I said. I walked past him, out the door, and didn't look back. Outside the ballroom, the press was in a frenzy. Sterling was at a podium, giving a brief, formal statement. "In light of the information presented tonight, Nimbus Arc will be placing its contract with Virilic Dynamics on hold. Pending a full, independent, and internal investigation, we cannot and will not tolerate fraud. We are actively, as of tonight, considering a new strategic partner, led by the original architect of the campaign." He didn't say my name. He didn't have to. Every camera, every reporter, every person in that industry would know by morning. I didn't stop. I walked through the opulent lobby, past the shocked, whispering guests. I pushed through the heavy glass doors and out into the night. The Chicago air was cold, biting, and clean. It smelled like the lake and car exhaust. It was real. I stood on the sidewalk, the sounds of the city replacing the suffocating hum of the gala, and I felt nothing. The triumph was gone. The rage was gone. The adrenaline was a fading, metallic taste in my mouth. I had won. I had eviscerated them. I had taken back my work, my name, my future. But the revenge was hollow. It didn't give me back the 7 years of my marriage. It didn't give me back the man I thought I'd married. It didn't erase the nights I'd cried, the months I doubted my own sanity. It didn't make me clean. I pulled out my phone. I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't call my new team. I called my dad. He picked up on the second ring, the sound of a late-night talk show in the background. "Hey, Dad? Riles, it's late. You did it. Didn't you?" It wasn't a question. "Yeah," I said, my voice finally cracking, just a little. "I did what I had to do. I leaned against a cold stone planter. I did it, and it's all a mess. I don't know what this costs. Dad, I don't know what I've just become. But you weren't silent, he said, his voice quiet, steady. This time, you didn't stay quiet. No, I whispered. I wasn't silent. Well, he sighed. That's a start. So now from this silence, from this quiet, you're in right now, you get to decide who you're gonna be next. That's all we get. Honey, the next choice. I'm tired. Dad. I know. Get some sleep. Riles, call me in the morning. He hung up. I walked away from the hotel, toward the parking garage. My old, reliable 10-year-old car was parked on the 3rd level, tucked between a row of gleaming black Mercedes and a bright red Porsche. I clicked the remote. The lights flashed, a small, unassuming beacon. I got in, I shut the door, and the chaos of the night was finally, truly, muffled. I sat in the dark. My hands were on the steering wheel. They were trembling, just slightly. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were wide, dark, and exhausted, but they were clear, and they weren't looking away. Tonight, I wasn't a hero, and I wasn't a devil. I was just the woman who took back her name, in a world where people get used to living on someone else's. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Let me know in the comments where you are listening from. I'd love to connect and hear your thoughts. Please subscribe to Zoe Revenge Stories, like this video, and show your support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.